Hello everyone, welcome to Archant Towers on a glorious Friday afternoon. Glorious Friday afternoon. Summer is here for, what, a week? Another week maybe, Pad?
I don't
get a week out of it.
Too optimistic. I think by all accounts it's going to be leaving as swiftly as it came.
Well, we have got 3 games of the season left. One of them is this weekend. It's officially a long old poke as we head to Preston, of course. I think our eyes were both watering at the time we were going to have to leave, and we're possibly leaving it a bit later than some tomorrow. We've been at Colney today, so we were going to bring you right up to date with everything that took place there. So we spoke to Daniel Farke and James Maddison. Likewise, get your questions, comments in, tell us where you're watching from, if it's equally as sunny, and the drink you have in your hand. And if you want to ask us some Norwich City questions as well, then by all means do so. But as we said, kick off 3 p.m. tomorrow at Deepdale. Pad, team news. Now, as Daniel Farke listed it all off today, it all seemed quite positive. It's like, oh, here's some good news. Everyone's back.
Yeah. Well,
sort of.
Yeah, no. In terms of training, that seems to be the case. Apart from, gosh, it's the long-term boys, really. I think just going through it in my own head. Stiepermann's back, Tribal's back, Hernandez is back, Reed is okay despite coming off at the end with a back problem.
I was worried that was going to be a while, So
yeah, well, with the backs you're never quite sure, are you? But apparently he was a bit sore for 2 days, but took a full part in training. Tell a lie, no Zimmerman tomorrow. The problem with his glutes.
Pain in the backside, as someone decided to
to
declare on Twitter.
We won't be putting that in the paper tomorrow, I'm pretty sure. On the team news slab.
Too professional.
So he won't be available. Raggett is missed training on Thursday with a dead leg. No, tell a lie, he missed training on... Oh, no, it might have been Thursday. He's missed a day's training. And with Zimmerman unavailable, you wouldn't probably want to travel with just Kozer and Hanley in the centre-back positions. But other than that, yeah, certainly in forward areas. Tribal not for this weekend, potentially for Leeds and Sheffield, which is good. And obviously good in terms of he's going to be back, get a full pre-season and then available for the start of next season, you would hope. And Hernandez, Hernandez hasn't played since March the 17th, I don't think, hamstring problem. Then had a setback on his return from the hamstring initially. He's trained 2 or 3 days, will be in the party that goes up to Preston and potentially could start, but I don't think you would see him playing 90 minutes. So yeah, all in all, long-winded way of saying, sadly there's only 3 games left, so it's a bit of a half full, half empty type of glass situation, because materially there's not a lot on these 3 games, is there? But in terms of, I suppose, bedding things in, I mean, to use Hernandez as a prime example, he looked like the penny had dropped and he was just getting to grips with what the Championship was all about. Then he was stopped in his tracks literally by an injury, so if he can come back in and just show a few glimpses of what he's all about, then that bodes well moving into the summer.
It's all about next season, isn't it? I think it's too late for a playoff push. I think just a little bit, slightly too late for a playoff push. Conversely, Preston, who of course Norwich are facing, 3 points off the top 3, Pad.
See you later, Mr. Clark.
Off goes Clarkey. There he is. He's waving. You can't see him on the ball.
City.
Preston 3 points off the top 6, Pad. Alec Neil. I mean, you asked Daniel Farke about Alec today because it's an interesting one, isn't it? He's sitting in his old office, so to speak, and he spoke nicely as you'd expect him to, and I don't know, everyone's very amiable about it all, aren't they? And I think a lot of Norwich fans are probably quite happy with how well it's gone with Alec, relatively speaking. Yeah,
I mean, I suppose all of the scenarios and subplots around Alex Neil, they've been done and dusted when he came back here in October, November time, and got a good reception by all accounts. I wasn't at the game, but saw the quotes immediately after.
You haven't seen him, have you?
No, I've not seen him since he left. I've not seen him since he left, no, but I do recall his post-match. He was pleasantly surprised that you got the sense that it had been such a positive reaction to him, and on a personal level, human level, it is nice to see him doing well, as it is Chris Hughton. I've got to be honest, shows these were good managers, and things didn't work in certain phases of their Norwich tenures in the dugout, but doesn't mean they're bad managers, and both have gone on to prove that, and even if they fell short, Preston, in terms of the playoffs, it's still a phenomenal season for me, because there would have been no expectation whatsoever around them getting anywhere near it, and they had to sell the boy Hugel. I think he went to West Ham for a lot of money, and they haven't spent big money in replacing him. So having not seen them down here, I'm quite interested to see A, what style of play they're playing, and B, what type of players they've got, individuals, because something is knitted there quite clearly if you look at the table.
It's a pretty awful. I remember it being a pretty awful game. I don't think you missed much in terms of the action on the pitch. I think the only thing that really caught everyone's imagination was that Spud came on and David Thornhill did the fourth official job for the last few minutes of the game. So it wasn't the best game, but James Maddison, a wonderful James Maddison free kick. We got to speak to James Maddison today, and we'll get onto that obviously. But scored a wonderful free kick in that game. Let's have a look at some of your messages. Scott Bolton, Michael, are you excited to be able to say Alec Neil again? Well, yeah, always. What's wrong with that? Andrew Pegg is watching from a very sunny Preston, so I don't know if he's already made the trip up there. But and whether
Friday night in Preston, that's the dream right there.
I hope it's as nice as here. Joachim Broberg, summer feeling from Sweden. Lovely weather here. Oh, there's lovely people. Kellen Noble, your opinion of Dennis Srbeny? Think he will sink the goals for us? Question mark. What have you made of Dennis in recent weeks?
There's a player there. There's no two ways about it. But ultimately, and he himself said it when he spoke to us for the first time last week, I think it was, or the week before, that he'll be judged on goals. He felt he should have scored before he got off. He'd eventually got off the mark against Villa, wasn't it? Yeah, I recall. There was a chance against Reading. There was a good save in the Fulham game. But he knows better than anybody that goals will be how he's judged. Goals are how Nelson Oliveira, you would judge him this season. He's fallen short, and I think at the minute Dennis is probably benefiting from the fact he's in that acclimatisation period, like Zimmerman has gone through tribal to a degree, so there'll be a bit of slack given to him, I think. But next season, I'm sure there would be an expectation. He came with a reputation as a goal scorer, albeit at a lower level in Germany, but you'd need to see a little bit more in terms of end product. You know, there was opportunities against Cardiff, wasn't there? Hit the post, near post, and then the one Leitner cut back. You just think if he was really sharp and both in mind and body, then there's goals there for him. So I'd like to see that element added to his game. But yeah, there's something to work with there, no two ways about it. Do
you think he'll start tomorrow? Because Nelson can't be too happy that he's not playing.
No, I think he'll go back to Oliveira tomorrow. Asked him about that, Farke, last Friday. I think about you look at the last 5 or 6 games, it has literally almost been a rotational policy with his two strikers. And he said, yeah, it's great to have them both sort of fit and firing in terms of the competitive angle to it, but you would have to say neither have really said, this is my shirt, you're not getting it back. So until one of them does, and I would imagine he'll maintain that policy, and we'll see Nelson lead the line tomorrow.
Keith Shrek Shaw, I assume that is his real middle name. He says, Srbeny, I think, once he's up to scratch, will be a 20-goal-a-season man. Although, as per Chris Gorham's column this week, they don't exist anymore, is the perception.
I think Harry Kane usually gets around that mark.
He does, yeah. But, you know, how many's Salah got? Salah's got enough for 2 20-goal-a-season strikers, I think, this year. Keith adds, pads with his shirt sleeves rolled up. Looks like he means business, lol.
Well, you know, somebody actually has taken me to task for my sartorial elegance, wearing my school jumper all the time. So now the sun's out, we don't need the school jumper.
That's true. I'd love a jumper. Nothing wrong with a jumper. Keith adds that he is in Great Yarmouth, where it's hot. Any truth in a rumour of Christopher Nyman, a striker from Eintracht Braunschweig? I mean, probably. It's a German club, so that's probably a decent starting point, isn't it? Generally,
got a link there. That's where Hernandez came from. So. And I think when Hernandez came in, that's the neck of the woods Farke is from, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, I can see why that might grow a few legs, but whether it'll grow arms and a head, we'll see. And so on.
What an analogy! Thank you for the people who are saying congratulations. I am still awake, so that's been an achievement so far. Ayad remains watching from Croatia. Good luck to the team, as Neil will want to show how good he was. I mean, do you think? Is there any element, do you think, of people wanting a proof of point? Because if anyone's going to peddle that line, then we would, I guess. Alec showing his former club. Anyone at Norwich wanting to.
As I say, that to me a little bit like when Norwich first came back up against Lambert in his Villa days. Those first, I think Lambert referenced that the last time he was here with Wolves, was it, where those first 1 or 2 games were very uncomfortable because of everything that went around it and the sort of the sour nature of the exit. But thereafter you get past that and it is almost literally just you can enjoy the experience, and that's why it probably for me was quite surprising that Neil seemed to almost jump straight to that rather than having an uncomfortable afternoon at Carrow Road the first time round. So if he didn't have that down here, I don't see why. From his side of the fence, there might be one or two around the boardroom table in Norwich who would be quite happy to see him get beaten tomorrow. But no, in terms of the man himself, I don't see it. And having spoken to Maddison today, who justifiably may have felt a little bit aggrieved because having been brought in by Alec Neil didn't really favour him over Pritchard, Houlihan, Naismith, hence why he had to go out on loan to Aberdeen. It was only now, once Neil had departed this time last season, and ironically at Preston, where Alan Irvine gave him a start, gave him a chance. He came off the bench, scored, first championship game, first championship goal, hasn't looked back. But when asked about facing Neil tomorrow, he said, look, on a personal level, we had a great relationship. It just didn't happen football-wise for him. But, if he sees him tomorrow, shake his hand. And I get the sense that's probably mutual on both sides.
It's funny, isn't it? Alan Irvine probably wishes he was currently Preston manager at the moment. I wonder if he had half an eye on that job last summer when he left Norwich and said he still wanted to be a football manager. We did, what is it now? Mid to late April. So clearly time to start talking about the summer transfers. And the speculation already. You filed the line this morning on Marley Watkins being linked to Bristol City, Pad. That came up. Farke had to address that, and a bit of, obviously, where's Houlihan's future again, because that question's going to rumble on until we finally find out what the deal is. Marley, what's the impression you got from what Daniel said today? By the way, all the answers are over at PinkUn.com, so you can watch what they said there.
Yeah, I think if there was a tangible offer, they would certainly consider it, because he hasn't, by any stretch of the imagination, grasped his opportunity. We spoke to him at the start of March, and he wanted to project mitigation that he hadn't been played in the position he was at Barnsley last season when he went into double figures in both assists and goals. That's fair enough, but for me, really, it's for the player to as we're talking about Maddison got his opportunity, and boy, has he taken it. So I would, if I was Marley Watkins, be looking a little bit closer to home, and conversely, if there was interest from Bristol City or any other Championship club, I think Norwich would look to do something in that area, because you don't bring in Hernandez if you're hanging your hat on Marley Watkins, do you? Josh Murphy isn't potentially going to be going anywhere, and there's still Wiltshire to throw back into the mix. So, yeah, if there was something there, I think they would certainly give it serious consideration. But to be fair, Farke did reiterate that they brought him in because they felt he could and had proven that he could operate in the Championship. They still believe he can. They believe he would be highly motivated now, maybe to set the record straight next season. So there's no sense I got there today from Farke that he's willing to kick him out the door. But by the same token, as he rightly said, who knows what happens in the transfer window? Who knows which clubs are going to come with what offers for what players? So you can never say never, can you? And that is the reality as much for Marley as it is for James Maddison or anybody in that squad.
Where's Houlihan, the other one? That's going to carry on, of course, as I said, until it gets announced what's happening. To me, if the guy's not going to stay, which I would imagine, personally, is more likely than him staying, it'll need to be announced next week, because they'll want everyone to have a good old goodbye and send off and wish Wes all the best from Carrow Road, which will obviously be a cracking occasion. I guess we're in a holding pattern, really, aren't we, until we see what happens next week. James Maddison, though, Pad, impressive individual, as he has been on the pitch. Also,
he's from Coventry, Michael. He's from Coventry. What do you expect?
Everyone from Coventry is an impressive individual. That's what I've learned, basically, from all this. But, great that we got to speak to him. We all knew what was going to happen. We obviously were going to partake in the barrage of questions about his future. Yeah. I'm not entirely sure if we're any the wiser as to what's going to happen, but that's probably because no one is. No one really knows how this is going to pan out, do they? So, what did you read in it? Because he dealt with it really well. He's got a decent head on those shoulders, hasn't he?
He certainly has. Yeah, he's an intelligent footballer, and he's an intelligent young man as well. And as you rightly pointed out, since probably the age of 16, 17, he's had this. He's had this, that he's the next big thing. But as you rightly made the point, when he left Coventry and he headed to Norwich by no stretch were the only suitors. There was some big clubs seriously considering him as a potential addition, but no, he felt Norwich would the next logical step for him in his career. Now, as he said himself, initially it didn't work out in that first season, but he's come back and proven that he can clearly handle it at Championship level. So No, it's the same. It's the same scenario. We can go around the houses and continue to talk about speculation and rumours, but until there's a tangible offer on the table, then it will remain conjecture. But if we're hypothetically talking about there will be X, Y, and Z offers on the table, then he will certainly not be overawed by that situation. That's one thing you will say, and he's got a good support network around him. Good family, good representatives by all accounts. So, yeah, if he has decisions to make in the summer, then you would confidently predict he will make the right ones. Yeah.
That summer of conjecture, Pad. That's basically going to be our summer.
To be honest, it's not really a summer, is it? We've had this since probably like November, because it was all through January that we had this. So
it's true.
Looking forward to it hugely.
We love it. Let's get through some of your questions and comments, shall we? Chris Jennings, I think the jury is out on Farke. For me, the transition or not. This has been a poor season, needs to start next season well. There's certainly a debate that we'll get into, I'm sure, over the coming weeks, depending on how this season rounds off too. Nick Deal, what do you think the future holds for Nelson Oliveira? Would we accept a bid of a reasonable amount, which he says is £5 to £7 million?
If it was me, I would accept it. I'd drive him there.
There you go. Sean Holman, let's have a look what he says. Daniel sorted out defence this year, but when he fell out with Oliveira, stopped scoring, can't sort out the defence. If can't sort out his difference this time at Norwich, will come to the end. We must sign another striker regardless, which I think is something that is... we all know Norwich are going to try and sign a striker. You've written stories about it.
100%, yeah.
And to that point, Stephen Want says, is Dean Coney available? Which is, of course, a regular Norwich joke. He did score a goal for Norwich, Dean Coney, so there we go. Nyman is a Swede, apparently, says Joachim Broberg. A name for the Sweden World Cup squad. Opposite striker of Srbeny and Nelson, smaller, quicker. If he's in the Sweden World Cup squad... I don't think he's going to be coming to Norwich in the next few months, but yeah, there we go. I like it. Why not? And let's have a look. Well, I'll tell you what, let's move on to some other bits, shall we? Because you've got a nice little... this is Arsene Wenger Day, isn't it? Really, Pad? Arsene Wenger Day. Sky Sports have been in overdrive for 12 hours. They've been building up to this moment for a few years, I'm sure. And you asked Daniel Farke about Arsene Wenger.
Certainly did. Bearing in mind their paths crossed memorably. In fact, as I look up at my screen, I'm seeing Sky Sports man outside, pitch side at the Emirates.
They've let him in.
Where, of course, Norwich and their 9,000 strong travelling support had a wonderful evening there, and very unfortunate to fall the wrong side of it in extra time. We're so close to knocking them out, weren't they, in normal time? So we got some nice colour from Daniel about both that game and its wider impact, not on just English football but world football, and you did get the sense that... and you can see the parallels that technically kind of cultured, possession-based, technically decent midfielders that Arsenal in their pomp had in abundance. You know, that's clearly the template Farke in his coaching career, and you could see how a man like Wenger would have been a huge influence on him. And as he said, you know, basically the funny line was that that your man had not had a day off in 15 years, so given Farke had the odd day off, he
poor.
Yeah, poor indeed.
Poor show.
So if the key to success is not having a day off, then back to work, Daniel. So, but yeah, I mean, what more could he say? You know, all the tributes that have poured forth today, underlining the longevity and the impact. You know, it's a huge legacy that he's left on the English game, and obviously, in recent years, it feels like maybe time has caught him up and passed him by in terms of the style of play and, you know, your modern day Premier League type coaches that are now doing it slightly different to Wenger. But as Farke said, you know, to have been in it as long as he has at that level deserves all the plaudits he's getting today for me.
Yeah, spot on. Stephen Noakes, boys, how many out do you think in the summer? He thinks at least 6 to 8. Lorne, last gasp, Smybert, obviously is definitely a real name. I think there'll be at least 6 out and 4 in. It's always hard putting a number on it, isn't it, Paddy? But I mean, the idea that last summer was a big transition summer and this season might be slightly smoother. It's tricky because they haven't got the easy wins this year, have we? No, obviously no. Wes and Alex Tettey are both due to be out of contract, but that's it.
It is on that front. But clearly, you know, with an Naismith and a Martin going out on loan, they're two that they would hope they could somehow reach a conclusion, but there's so many moving parts in those two deals for the simple reason that they're both still under contract for at least another season, without going and checking the records. And there's a whole slew of financial implications around that. So, but you would like to think those sort of numbers, 6 and 4, I could see that. It's difficult. It's difficult because ultimately the World Cup complicates it slightly. I think that might delay business. Clubs will be reticent to do too much before the World Cup starts, and that doesn't help Norwich's. In an ideal world, you'd want the players in as early as possible, and then they're all there at pre-season, and Daniel can work with them from day one. So I don't think that's likely to happen. And of course, the prized asset who we've talked about at length here today, he holds the key to a lot of the financial elements to this. If they were to sell him and get decent amounts of money for him, then it allows them to maybe be a bit more ambitious in what they would like to do. One thing you can say categorically is Farke and Weber to a more important degree as he drives the strategy. He'll have plans A, B and C, and probably D and E as well. So it's hard to say definitively what they would look to do. You touched on it, top end of the pitch, no doubt about it. That will be the priority this summer. But what they could do will hinge a lot on, as it did last summer, who they can move on and what revenue they can generate.
Spot on. Rob Garnham, if Miley Watkins is up for sale, can you give me the details of where I can chip in for the cab ride to Bristol? There we go. And John Davey and Nick Deal both asking, John says, any updates on Maurice Leitner? Nick Deal, realistic chance of getting Reed and or Leitner permanently? Again, a story you wrote this week, I think, earlier in the week. I can't see permanent deals for either of those two, because again, we're getting into the financial realities of the situation. Both are under contract at their parent clubs. I think it hinges certainly with Reed on Southampton's league status. If they were to go down, then there would be some serious decisions have to be made at Southampton. We're talking about Norwich this summer in terms of squad moulding. Southampton there would have to be some major exodus, and as a result, they might have to go and revert back to their younger, homegrown type players. Mm-hmm. And what they're getting then in Harrison Reed is a player who's had a full season of the Championship under his belt. So he would be a perfect fit for them in the Championship, sadly for Norwich. So I think if they go down, that probably would scupper the chances of getting Reed back on loan. I think Leitner, again, as I say, a lot of this caveated with what happens with Maddison, but I think Daniel did say in that piece that depends on Augsburg, but it also depends on Moritz, and you get the sense from Moritz that he's really enjoyed. He's almost had a new lease of life, because we all know the backstory. Very talented, highly rated. His career's gone down a cul-de-sac and hadn't played a lot of football prior to coming to here. He now knows he's got a head coach who believes in him. That's massively important and will give him opportunities. I could see Leitner back here on loan again, but as I say, it's very hard at this stage with so many potential scenarios likely to play out to sort of say definitively. But in terms of would Farke want both of those, absolutely, all day long. Yeah, Morris will be a very interesting one, I think, over the summer, most definitely. Anthony Barwick, tricky question this. You say transition season. What have we learnt from so many home defeats? I mean, Norwich are away tomorrow, as long as the journey it's not at Carrow Road. And I say Norwich have been more successful away from home. They're actually winless away from home in the last 6 games, although they have drawn 4 of them. So it's a tricky one. I don't know how badly they've played at home in recent weeks. They've just had sort of a different level of opposition, probably.
Well, I get the feeling over the piece at Carrow Road, the last few games, albeit the results maybe haven't followed, but they're actually, maybe Sheffield Wednesday onwards, just before Christmas there, when Pritchard, was in the team with Maddison, and they really cut loose that day, didn't they? Since then, I don't think the fare has been that poor at Carrow Road compared to prior to then, when, let's be honest, at times it was dross. And it was a hard watch for us, let alone people who've played that hard earned. So, but I would say the curve has been upward in terms of home productivity. Okay, goals and wins have been still elusive or inconsistent, but it does feel, for me, at Carrow Road, that he's tried to mix it up in terms of you putting in Hernandez with Murphy. They've gone a bit longer, a bit quicker because they've got more pace. And they have tried to mix it up a little bit rather than what we all saw, which was this laborious lateral. We'll get to the penalty box eventually, and then we won't do anything with the ball. So No, I would say in terms of Carrow Road this season, the curve is upward rather than going the other direction.
Yeah. Let's just arrest that curve that's maybe more downward away from home before because it's a long way to go, as a lot of the Norwich fans will find out, some of which have made the journey today, I think, from what I can tell. One more from Sean. Why can't we play our younger players like Godfrey? Well, mostly because they're out on loan this season, but it'd be interesting to see when they are back next season, which ones feature. A prediction, how we tend to end it, Pad? I mean, a draw would be my guess. Norwich had a good win there last season, didn't they? James Maddison scoring his first league goal for Norwich on his championship debut. Something similar in terms of a 3-1 win would be nice. Preston, though, that season, their season was basically done and they were kind of a bit on the beach that afternoon, weren't they?
Which won't be the case tomorrow. As we started the broadcast, for me it's win or bust tomorrow, in the sense that 3 games left after tomorrow, I think it is, or would it be 2? I'm not sure. And 3 points to make up. So I think that will probably tip the scales in their favour. I would think they would probably edge it, just because, sadly, and again it underlines where Norwich are in the pecking order at the moment. They've played at Cardiff, hugely motivated, and you could see that as the game elapsed at Carrow Road last week, because Norwich were in many facets as good, if not better, but that absolute desire, we've got to win here, nothing else is good enough for us, which you saw from Fulham as well on Good Friday. Villa obviously went the other way, but I think Villa were very poor that day, and Norwich cashed in to full effect. But you just feel it'll be another Fulham Cardiff type of vibe for me, where they will just have a bit more intensity than Norwich, who, again, Maddison said the right things today about, they're not on the beach and they've still got things to play for and individual targets, but that's all well and good. But as I say, Preston with Neil in that dressing room will have them properly fired up, and if Norwich can't match that, then I think they'll fall short. Yeah, spot on. It will need a collective effort, most definitely. If there's not one person, and knowing what football's like and how competitive people are, there's not one person inside Norwich City Football Club who would quite fancy ending Neil and Preston's playoff hopes tomorrow. I'd be quite surprised. But it's going to take more than one person either way, or 2 or 4 or however many. Don't forget, me and Paddy heading up to Preston, to Deepdale tomorrow, along with David Freezer, of course, so that you don't have to. But we'll have full coverage before, during and after the game, live team news, all the reaction afterwards too. That will all be at PinkUn.com, so follow us all there. Thank you very much, Pat, for your time. Thanks all for your comments and questions. Much appreciated. We'll do this again very soon, I'm sure. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow.